Writing equations of perpendicular lines. So the strict definition of perpendicular lines is that when they cross, they form a 90-degree angle. So don't write this, but like let's say you have this line here. These two lines would not are not perpendicular because at their intersection, this right here, this is not 90 degrees. That's an obtuse angle. That's a large angle. That's not 90 degrees. They need to form a 90-degree angle at their intersection. So if you have a perpendicular line, it's going to look something a little bit more like this. Okay, let me draw a perpendicular line. It's going to look more like this. Where at their intersection, this angle is 90 degrees. That's a 90-degree angle, meaning they're perpendicular. And the new sort of concept that you're going to learn with perpendicular lines has to do with their slopes. Now, with parallel lines, they have the same slope. With perpendicular lines, there's a little relationship that is quite different than with parallel that we're going to kind of explore here. So if I compare the slopes of these two lines, first let me write the slope of this line I just drew. So this line right here, if I look at the slope of it, it goes up 3/2. So the slope of this line is 3/2. And if I look at the slope of this line that was already there, it's down 2/3. So it's -2/3. So if you compare those two slopes, 3/2 compared to -2/3, basically what's happened, if you're trying to write a perpendicular slope, is that it's flipped. 3/2 now is 2/3, and then a negative. So not only did the numerator and the denominator flip, but it now has changed from positive to negative, or if you're going the other way, it changed from negative to positive. So what we call this, to fill in this blank here, perpendicular lines have slopes that are, we call this negative reciprocals. They're negative reciprocals. And negative, you know what that means. But reciprocal is just like a fancy word for flipping the numbers. Okay? So number 2 says, write equations that are perpendicular to the given lines and go through the given point. Write the equations in point-slope form. Okay. So A says perpendicular to 4/3 x plus 1. So it needs to be perpendicular. So this slope right here is 4/3. So in order to be perpendicular, the slope has to be the negative reciprocal of 4/3. So the slope of our new line that's perpendicular to this line, the slope would have to be -3/4. I just flipped and made that now negative. It's the negative reciprocal. And it goes through this point. So let me write the equation in point-slope form. Remember, it says point-slope form here. So I'm going to have y minus 2. My slope was -3/4 we just figured out. And then x plus 5, that's in point-slope form. Let me show you B. So B says perpendicular to y plus 4, -3, x plus 7. So the slope of this line is -3. So the perpendicular slope to that would have to be the negative reciprocal. But this gets a little confusing when it's not in a fraction form, right? It's kind of hard to flip anything. So I'm going to say this is -3/1. So I'm going to flip and then change the sign, right? So if it's negative, there's two negatives, it's going to become positive. So the slope of our new line is going to be positive 1/3. It's negative of this slope. Since it was -3/1, going to flip, become positive 1/3. So now let me write it in point-slope form. Y minus 9 equals 1/3 x subtract 1. Okay, so negative reciprocal. Reciprocal means flip and then change the sign. So if it was positive, it's going to become negative. If it's negative, it's going to turn back into positive. Okay. So I'll let you do C, D, and E. Number 3 says, write equations that are perpendicular to the given lines and go through the given point. Write it in slope-intercept form. Okay, so this time I want it in slope-intercept form. Okay, so it needs to be perpendicular to y equals 2x plus 3. Now I'm going to write this slope as 2 over 1. So the negative reciprocal, if we want it perpendicular, since it's 2 over 1, it's going to be negative 1 over 2. That's the negative reciprocal of 2 over 1, would be negative 1 over 2. Now, it wants it in slope-intercept form, but my strategy is I'm going to put it in point-slope form first, and then convert. So I'm going to write y minus 8 equals negative 1/2 is the slope we determined, parentheses x plus 4. And now I'm going to convert it into slope-intercept form. So I'm going to distribute the 1/2. So it's going to be negative 1/2 x. Negative 1/2 times 4 would be negative 2. Got to move the 8 over because I got to isolate the y variable in order to be in slope-intercept form. It's got to be in that y equals mx plus b. So it add 8 to both sides. So this is just going to say y equals negative 1/2 x. I add 8 to the negative 2. It's going to be 6. Let me show you letter B. Same thing. So we have our slope here, 2/5. So the negative reciprocal would be negative 5 over 2. Flipped, made a negative. It's got to go through 4, 1. So I'm going to write it in point slope form first. So I'm going to have y minus 1 equals negative 5/2 parentheses x minus 4. It asks to be in slope-intercept form. So I'm going to convert this into slope-intercept form. First thing I'm going to do is distribute. Negative 5/2 x. Negative 5/2 times negative 4, I believe that's 10. Yeah, positive 10. Add 1 to both sides to isolate the y. I'm going to have negative 5/2 x plus 11. And that's all there is to that. Now, careful as you do C, because it says negative 0.5. And in order to do this negative reciprocal work, you want that slope to be written as a fraction. So hopefully you know negative 0.5 is just, I'm going to cross that out for you. And I'm just going to say that's negative 1/2, right? So you're going to flip. You know what? Let me do that one also. So negative 0.5 as a fraction is just negative 1/2. And you don't know how to convert a decimal to a fraction, the calculator can do it, okay? But 0.5 is like 1/2. So do the negative reciprocal. So since it's negative, it's going to become positive this time around, and it's going to be 2 over 1, which is really just 2, right? So as I write this equation in point slope form, I'm not going to write 2 over 1. I'm just going to write 2. 2 over 1 is just 2. So I'm going to have y plus 5. Remember, I'm using this point. This goes through this point. 2, my slope, x plus 3. And then distribute. So it's going to be 2x plus 6, y plus 5 there. Again, isolate the y, subtract 5 on each side. So I'm going to have y equals 2x plus 1. 6 minus 5 is 1. So there you go. Okay. You can do D and E. All right. Number 4 says write an equation for the line that passes through negative 10, 5. So it's going to pass through this and is perpendicular. Let me change that. And is perpendicular to the line that passes through these. Okay. So it's perpendicular to the line that passes through 2, 8, and 6, 18. So in order to figure out like the slope of the line that's perpendicular to the line that passes through those, we have to find the slope of the line that passes through those before that. So let's find the slope that passes through 2, 8, and 6, 18. So I'm going to use that slope formula for that. So the slope, we got y2 minus y1 would be 18 minus 8 over 6 minus 2, which is 10 over 4. And 10 over 4, that would be 2.5, but we'll keep it as a fraction, which is very important for these sort of questions because we need to do that negative reciprocal. So this is going to simplify to 5 over 2. So this is the slope of the line that goes through 2, 8 and 6, 18. But we want a line that's perpendicular to that. So the perpendicular slope of 5 over 2 would be negative 2 over 5. So we found the slope, and now we just got to do the perpendicular of that. It wants it in point slope form. So we have the slope, and we have that point of negative 10, 5 up here. We have this point. So let's write the equation. It'd be y minus 5 equals negative 2/5 x plus 10. Okay, so all we did was we found the slope of the line that would go through those points that I underlined in blue. And then we did the negative reciprocal of that because we need it to be perpendicular. And then we just wrote the equation with the given point in point slope form. Okay, I'm going to let you do 5, but I'm going to do 6 just because there's a little wrinkle in it where it says we want it in slope intercept form. But I'm going to do the exact same process, except I'm going to put it in point slope form first, and then I'm going to convert it into slope intercept form. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find what the slope of the line is that goes through those points. So I'm going to say x1, y1, x2, y2. So the slope, 9 minus 4, and then 17 minus 2. It's going to be 5 over 15, which simplifies to 1/3. But the negative reciprocal of that, flip, it'd be 3 over 1. And I have to make it negative. Got to do the negative reciprocal. So there you have it. So now I'm going to write in point slope form first. So I have this point up here, 1, 4. I have my slope of negative 3 over 1, which I'm just going to write as negative 3. So I'm going to have y minus 4 equals negative 3, x minus 1. And that's in point slope form, but what I highlighted in pink, remember it says we want it in slope intercept form. So I'm going to distribute the negative 3. Negative 3x. Negative 3 times negative 1 is positive 3. Rewrite my y minus 4 over there. And then isolate y. I'm going to add 4. So 3 plus 4 is 7. And there it is. Okay, hopefully that was enough.